Imagine planting once and then harvesting for 15 years. No annual sowing, no constant buying of young plants, no race against time when spring comes too late or summer ends too early. What if there were vegetable varieties that behave like fruit trees? Once established, they come back year after year, growing larger and more productive, while you hardly have to do a thing. The truth is, these plants exist. They aren't an invention or a vision of the future. They have been growing for centuries in gardens, on farms, and in permaculture systems worldwide. And yet, very few people know about them. Because our modern agriculture has conditioned us to believe that vegetables are annuals, that we must start over every year, and that dependence on seeds, timing, and conditions is normal. But what if that's exactly where the mistake lies? What if we've forgotten what true sustainability means? What if the path to independence isn't found in more work, but in smarter choices? Stay tuned until the end, because I'm not just going to show you 18 vegetable varieties, but also how to plant and care for them correctly and integrate them into a system that gives you real security. This video will fundamentally change your perspective on gardening. We live in a time when supply chains are fragile, when food prices are rising, not just by a few percent, but noticeably, massively, and for many households, existentially. A time when the quality of supermarket goods is falling while dependency grows. At the same time, we've forgotten what our grandparents still knew, that a garden can be more than a hobby. It can be life insurance, a silent green safety net that no one can take away, one that doesn't depend on banks, supply chains, or political decisions. Perennial vegetables, often called perennials or permanent crops, are the key to exactly this form of independence. They are low maintenance, often hardier than annual varieties, and over the years they develop deep root systems that survive drought, pull nutrients from deeper soil layers, and actively improve the soil instead of exhausting it. In permaculture, they are considered the backbone of any system because they provide stability, predictability, and yields even when you're not there, when the year is difficult, or when the world around you becomes chaotic. Before we get to the individual plants, let's understand why perennial crops are so revolutionary. Conventional gardening as we know it today is based on a system that wants one thing above all: control. Control over the timing of sowing, growth, and harvest. That sounds good at first, but it has a price. That price is permanent labor, permanent dependence on external inputs like seeds, fertilizer, and irrigation, and a constant repetition of the same tasks. Every year starts at zero. Every year you have to prepare the beds, sow, prick out, transplant, water, hoe, fertilize, and at the end of the season, it's all over. The soil is empty, often exhausted, and you start all over again. That isn't a sustainable system. It's a hamster wheel. Perennial crops break this pattern. They establish themselves once and then they stay. Every year they build more biomass, more root mass, more storage capacity. They don't get weaker over time, they get stronger. They need less care because they can take care of themselves. Their roots reach deep, sometimes several meters down, accessing water and nutrients that are out of reach for annual plants. This means they are more drought-resistant, nutrient-efficient, and less prone to pests and diseases. An established perennial system is like a forest. It regulates itself, builds humus, attracts beneficial insects, and becomes more stable with each passing year. Now let's start with the first vegetables you definitely need to know. The first is asparagus. I'm not talking about the bundled asparagus from the supermarket, but a real investment in your garden. Asparagus is a perennial that takes 2 to 3 years to establish after planting. During this time, it forms a massive, wide-reaching root system that can sometimes reach 2 meters deep. But starting from the 4th year, you can harvest every spring for the next 15 to 30 years. Some asparagus beds produce for over 40 years. Imagine that, a single investment of time and labor, followed by decades of harvesting. This isn't just practical, It's strategic. Asparagus loves deep, well-drained soil. It needs sun, at least 6 hours a day, but also patience. Planting ideally takes place in spring, in trenches about 30 centimeters deep. The roots are spread out on small mounds of soil so they can expand in all directions, and then covered with soil. In the first 2 years, you simply let the asparagus grow. You harvest nothing. It's hard, I know, but it's essential. The plant needs this time to gather strength and build its root system. From the 3rd year, you can cautiously begin to harvest, but only for a few weeks. From the 4th year onward, you get the full harvest, which runs from April to June, depending on the weather. You cut the spears when they break through the ground, and the plant continually produces new ones. After St. John's Day, June 24th, you stop harvesting and let the plant grow again so it can store energy for the following year. Asparagus needs little care, but it loves compost. An annual application of well-rotted compost in fall or spring is rewarded by the plant with bountiful yields. And the beauty of it is that asparagus has practically no pests. The only challenge is patience. But if you muster it, you'll be rewarded with one of the finest and most expensive vegetables, which you'll never have to buy again. The second plant is rhubarb. Hardy, undemanding, and nearly indestructible. Rhubarb is one of the few plants that thrives even in shady, cooler areas of the garden, though it prefers sun. It grows like a bush with large, fleshy stalks that you can harvest every spring and which keep growing back. An established rhubarb crown can produce for 20, 30, even 40 years or longer. It needs almost no care, very little fertilizer, and is practically immune to most pests. You plant it once, and it stays. That is the principle we are looking for. Rhubarb is planted in the fall or spring as a rootstock. You dig a generous planting hole, add plenty of compost, set the crown so the buds are just below the soil surface, and water well. In the first year, let the plant grow without harvesting. From the 2nd year, you can cautiously harvest individual stalks. From the 3rd year, you can go all out. Harvesting is done from April to June by twisting the stalks out at the base rather than cutting them. This is important because cut surfaces can rot. After June, you should stop harvesting so the plant can store energy for next year. Rhubarb loves moisture and nutrients. A thick layer of mulch keeps the soil moist and suppresses weeds. Every few years, you can divide the crown if it gets too large, allowing you to gain new plants or give them away. Rhubarb is not only delicious in pies and compotes, it's also rich in vitamin C, potassium, and fiber. And the best part? It's one of the first plants of the year to give you something to harvest when the rest of the garden is still asleep. The 3rd variety is the Jerusalem artichoke, also known as sunchoke. This plant is a true survival vegetable, an emergency food source that has saved people time and again during crises. Jerusalem artichokes originally come from North America and were cultivated by indigenous peoples there. It grows even in the poorest soils, spreads through underground tubers, and gives you a harvest every year without you having to do a thing. Jerusalem artichokes are winter hardy, withstanding temperatures down to -30 degrees, and they grow even in dry, sandy soils where almost nothing else thrives. The tubers remain in the ground and can be harvested from fall to spring as needed. You dig them up when you need them, and the rest stay in the soil and sprout again in the spring. Jerusalem artichokes are rich in inulin, a prebiotic fiber that promotes gut health but can also cause bloating in sensitive people. The taste is slightly nutty and earthy, and the tubers can be eaten raw, boiled, fried, or prepared as a soup. But be careful. Jerusalem artichokes can become invasive. When you plant them, choose a location deliberately, ideally a corner where they can spread without crowding out other crops. You can also plant them in a confined area, such as with a root barrier. The plant grows up to 3 meters tall, has sunflower-like flowers in the fall, and is also visually appealing. The Jerusalem artichoke is the plant you can forget about that still delivers. It is the silent reserve in the soil, always there when you need it. The fourth plant is the tree kale, also known as perennial kale or walking stick kale. This is an old, almost forgotten type of kale that grows like a tree and produces leaves for several years. Tree kale can reach up to 3 meters in height and looks like a small palm tree. You harvest the leaves continuously from bottom to top, and the plant keeps growing upward, producing new leaves. A tree kale plant can live for 3 to 5 years and provide continuous yields during that time. Tree kale is incredibly nutritious, rich in vitamins A and C, calcium, and iron. It is winter hardy down to about -10 degrees Celsius, even colder in milder regions. And it provides you with fresh greens even in the depths of winter when nothing else is growing. This makes it an invaluable plant for self-sufficiency. Imagine it's January, there's snow on the ground, and you go outside to harvest fresh kale leaves. That is independence. Tree kale is best planted in the spring as a seedling. It needs a sunny location and nutrient-rich soil. The plant grows slowly in the first few months, but really takes off in the second year. Harvesting begins when the plant is about a meter tall. You pluck the lower leaves, and the plant continues growing at the top. In winter, you can keep harvesting as long as the ground isn't frozen. Tree kale is traditionally very well known in England, Scotland, and Ireland, and has been grown there for centuries. But in Germany and Central Europe, it is almost forgotten. A big mistake because it is one of the most reliable and productive perennial vegetables there is. Now we come to plants that many know but don't perceive as perennial. The fifth is the onion, specifically the walking onion or Egyptian walking onion. This extraordinary variety doesn't form a large bulb at the base, but instead forms small bulbils on the stalks, often in several tiers on top of each other. You harvest these small onions continuously, and the plant keeps growing. It is absolutely winter hardy, needs almost no care, and provides you with fresh onions all year round. The bulbils can be either eaten or replanted to grow new plants. The walking onion is an uncomplicated plant. It grows in clumps, similar to chives. You can also harvest the green tubular leaves and use them like spring onions. The plant spreads slowly but is not invasive. It's ideal for bed edges, herb gardens, or as an understory planting beneath taller crops. You plant it once and almost forget it, except for harvesting. This is a plant you should have in every self-sufficiency garden. The sixth plant is garlic chives, also called Chinese chives. Unlike normal garlic, which you have to replant every year, garlic chives grow as a perennial. They look like chives but have broader, flatter leaves and a mild garlic flavor. You harvest the green leaves from spring to fall, and the plant sprouts back repeatedly. In summer, garlic chives form beautiful white flower umbels that are not only edible, but also attract pollinators. Garlic chives are extremely low maintenance and winter hardy. They spread slowly, forming dense clumps, and are an excellent companion plant in polycultures because their scent deters many pests. You can use the leaves fresh in salads, soups, on bread, or freeze them. Garlic chives are rich in vitamin C and have antibacterial properties. They are a perfect addition for anyone who loves the taste of garlic, but doesn't want to plant new cloves every year. The seventh variety is good old horseradish. Once planted, it will never leave you. Horseradish is extremely robust, grows in almost any soil from heavy to sandy, and spreads via its roots. In the fall or early spring, you dig up the thick, fleshy roots, process them into sharp, fresh horseradish, and the plant simply continues to grow from the root pieces left in the ground. Even the smallest root fragments will sprout again, which is why horseradish is sometimes considered difficult to remove. But if you grow it intentionally, that's an advantage. Horseradish isn't just a spice, it's also a significant medicinal plant. It has strong antibacterial, expectorant, and circulation-boosting effects and strengthens the immune system. In folk medicine, horseradish is used for colds, bladder infections, and digestive issues. The root's heat comes from mustard oils released when grated, which then reach their full effect. Fresh horseradish is many times more intense and healthier than what you buy. Planting takes place in the spring. You set root cuttings, called sets, diagonally into the soil about 30 to 40 centimeters deep. Horseradish loves deep, loose soil, but also manages with heavy clay. The plant grows in its first year, forming large, strong leaves. From the second year, you can harvest. You dig up the main root, but always leave some side roots in the ground, and by the next year, the plant sprouts again. Horseradish is one of those plants that keeps you healthy while staying with you for decades. Number 8 is the artichoke. Many people think artichokes are complicated, exotic, or only growable in warm regions. But there are winter-hardy varieties that thrive without problems, even in Central Europe, and are perennial. The plants are imposing, reaching heights of up to 2 meters, with silvery green decorative leaves, looking like a cross between a vegetable and an ornamental plant. The artichoke gives you these delicate, fleshy flower buds every year, which you harvest before they open. Artichokes need space, at least 1 square meter per plant, and a sunny, protected location. The soil should be nutrient-rich, deep, and well-drained. Planting takes place in spring, either as a seedling or by dividing older crowns. In the first year, the artichoke usually doesn't produce flowers yet, but builds its root mass. Harvesting starts in the second year, running from July to September. An established plant can provide 5 to 10 large flower buds per year, sometimes more. Harvest when the buds are tightly closed and the outer scales still lie flat. You cut them with a piece of the stalk. Artichokes are not only delicate in flavor, but also extremely healthy. They contain cynarin, a bitter substance that supports the liver, promotes digestion, and can lower cholesterol levels. In mild regions, artichokes winter outdoors without issue. In colder areas, you should protect them with leaves, straw, or fleece. The plants are long-lived and become more productive with each year. Number 9. Sorrel. This ancient vegetable and medicinal plant is a perennial that provides you with fresh, tart greens in early spring, often as early as March when the snow has just melted. Sorrel is rich in vitamin C, iron, and oxalic acid, which gives it its characteristic sour taste. The plant is extremely winter-hardy, grows practically anywhere from sunny to semi-shady, and can handle poor soils. You harvest the young leaves for salads, soups, sauces, or smoothies. Older leaves become a bit tougher and more bitter, but are still usable. Sorrel keeps sprouting back as long as you don't harvest down to the root. The plant blooms in early summer with inconspicuous reddish flower spikes, which you should remove if you want to promote leaf production. Sorrel also self-seeds, so you'll have several plants over time. Sorrel used to be a staple in farm gardens and was considered a spring tonic to get new vitamins after the long winter. The plant is not only useful, but also one of the first to provide for you in the year at a time when there is almost nothing else to harvest. That makes it invaluable for self-sufficiency. The 10th plant is the perennial leek, a specific form of leek that sprouts back from the roots after harvest. Unlike normal leeks, which are consumed after harvest, perennial varieties form new shoots from the base. You cut off the top part, leave the root in the ground, and it forms new green stalks. This doesn't work indefinitely, but you can get 2 to 3 harvests per plant before replacing it or propagating it by division. Perennial leeks are well known in the British gardening tradition and have been cultivated there for centuries. It is winter hardy, undemanding, and provides you with fresh leeks over long periods. The plant isn't as widespread as normal leeks, but once you have it, you won't want to be without it. It perfectly demonstrates the principle of permanence. Plant once, harvest multiple times, less work, more yield. Number 11 is Good King Henry, an almost forgotten vegetable plant that was a staple in Europe for centuries before spinach replaced it. Good King Henry is a perennial from the goosefoot family and provides you with fresh, spinach-like leaves from spring into fall. The plant is extremely nutrient-dense, containing lots of iron, vitamin C, and minerals, and it is less demanding than spinach. Good King Henry grows in sun and partial shade, even tolerating shady spots under trees, and manages with poor soils. The plant grows to about half a meter, forms strong arrow-shaped leaves, and can stay in the same spot for over 10 years. You harvest the young leaves and shoot tips like spinach, and the plant sprouts back repeatedly. In spring, you can even use the young flower spikes like broccoli. Good King Henry was particularly widespread in rural areas because it is reliable and low maintenance. It needs almost no water, almost no fertilizer, and is practically pest-free. The plant is also an important food source for insects and fits perfectly into nature-oriented gardens. In times when diversity and resilience are becoming more important, Good King Henry should experience a renaissance. Number 12. Perennial herbs. Herbs are often underestimated, but they are essential not just for flavor, but also for health and the stability of the garden. Peppermint, oregano, thyme, sage, lemon balm, savory, tarragon, chives. All of these are perennials that come back for years, often decades. They give you flavor, medicinal benefits, diversity, and they are extremely easy to care for. Once planted, all you have to do is harvest. Peppermint, for example, is a vigorous plant that spreads heavily. It loves moist locations and partial shade and provides you with fresh leaves for tea, desserts, or just as a refreshing addition to water. Peppermint has digestive, antispasmodic, and cooling effects. You should plant it in a confined area, otherwise it will overgrow everything. Oregano and thyme are Mediterranean herbs that love dry, sunny locations. They are extremely drought-tolerant, need almost no water, and are winter hardy. Both are not only culinarily valuable, but also strong medicinal plants with antibacterial and antiviral properties. Thyme was traditionally used for respiratory diseases, oregano for digestive issues. Sage is another perennial with silvery green, fragrant leaves. It is winter hardy, loves sun and well-drained soil, and can live for over 10 years. Sage has anti-inflammatory and anti-sweat properties and is traditionally used for sore throats and colds. The plant is also an important bee forage. Lemon balm is a vigorous, lemon-scented plant that self-seeds and is practically indestructible. It grows in sun and partial shade, tolerates drought, and provides you with leaves for tea that has a calming and relaxing effect. Lemon balm is also an excellent plant for pollinators. Chives are the classic that almost everyone knows. They are perennial, winter hardy, grow in dense clumps, and provide you with fresh, mild onion tubes all year round. Chives are not only delicious, but also decorative when they form their purple flower balls in early summer, which are also edible. Herbs are the foundation of any self-sufficiency garden. They take up little space, provide enormous diversity, and are often the first plants you put into a new garden. They stabilize the system, attract beneficial insects, and give you flavor and health without you having to do much for it. Number 13 is woodruff. This shade-loving perennial naturally grows in deciduous forests, but also in shady garden areas where little else thrives. Woodruff is perennial, spreads slowly via runners, and forms a dense ground-cover carpet with delicate, star-shaped leaves. In spring, usually in April and May, it forms small white flowers that smell sweet. Woodruff is known for its characteristic scent, which comes from coumarin. The leaves are traditionally used for maibole, May wine, but also for tea, syrup, or as a flavoring in desserts. In small amounts, coumarin has a calming, antispasmodic effect. In large amounts, however, it can cause headaches. Therefore, woodruff should be used in moderation. The plant is ideal for shady areas under trees or on north-facing slopes where other vegetable plants won't grow. Woodruff shows that even the most difficult, darkest corners of your garden can be used productively. It needs no care, spreads slowly, and provides you with fresh greens every spring when you need it. Number 14, comfrey root. Comfrey is primarily known as a medicinal plant, but the young leaves are edible, though a bit rough and hairy, and very nutritious. Far more important, however, is comfrey's role as a soil improver and dynamic accumulator. Comfrey has a deep taproot that can reach up to 3 meters down. This root pulls nutrients, especially potassium, phosphorus, and nitrogen, from deep soil layers up to the surface and stores them in the leaves. You can cut the leaves and use them as mulch, as an addition to compost, or process them into liquid plant fertilizer. Comfrey tea is an excellent natural fertilizer, especially for heavy feeders like tomatoes, pumpkins, or potatoes. The plant is perennial, winter hardy, and grows in moist to normal soils in sun or partial shade. You cut the leaves several times a year, and the plant sprouts back repeatedly. Comfrey is a key plant in permaculture because it doesn't just benefit itself, but strengthens the entire system. It is an example of how perennial plants don't just provide food, but also improve the ecosystem of your garden. Comfrey builds humus, attracts pollinators, and is one of the most productive biomass plants ever. Number 15 is wild arugula, also called Rucola selvatica or perennial arugula. It is the perennial sister of the well-known salad mix arugula and has a more intense, peppery flavor. Wild arugula grows bushy, reaches about 40 to 60 centimeters in height, and is absolutely winter hardy. It forms the most leaves in spring and fall, but you can also harvest during mild phases in winter. The plant blooms from spring to fall, with small yellow flowers that not only look beautiful, but are also edible and also have a sharp taste. Wild arugula attracts many pollinators and is an excellent companion plant in polycultures. You harvest the leaves continuously, and the plant sprouts back repeatedly. It also self-seeds, so over time you'll have several plants in the garden without doing anything for it. Wild arugula is robust, undemanding, and grows in well-drained, not too nutrient-rich soils in full sun. It tolerates drought better than annual arugula and is practically pest-free. The leaves are rich in vitamins, minerals, and secondary plant metabolites that have health-promoting effects. Wild arugula is a perfect addition to salads, pestos, on pizza, or simply as a spicy addition to many dishes. Number 16, dandelion. Yes, you heard right. Dandelion isn't just a weed, it's one of the most nutrient-dense and versatile plants of all. The young leaves in spring are a delicate salad addition, slightly bitter but full of vitamins and minerals. The roots can be dug in the fall, roasted, and used as a healthy coffee substitute. The flowers make a wonderful syrup, jelly, or can be processed into dandelion honey. Dandelion is perennial, practically indestructible, and grows everywhere from sunny to semi-shady in any soil. Dandelion has a deep taproot that brings up nutrients from the depths and loosens the soil. The plant is an important early bloomer for insects and a valuable medicinal plant. Dandelion has detoxifying, diuretic, liver-strengthening, and digestive properties. In folk medicine, it has been used for centuries as a spring tonic. Instead of fighting dandelion as an enemy, you should see it as a resource. The plant reproduces itself, costs nothing, provides you with food and healing, and improves your soil. You can let it grow specifically in spots where it doesn't bother you and harvest it there. Dandelion is the perfect example of a plant you don't have to plant, but that still belongs to your perennial system. Number 17 is watercress. If you have access to a stream, pond, spring, or a damp spot, watercress is ideal. It grows in and near water, is perennial, and provides you with fresh, spicy greens all year round that are extremely rich in vitamin C, iron, calcium, and secondary plant metabolites. Watercress is considered one of the healthiest foods ever and was formerly grown systematically, especially in England. The plant grows creeping, forming long shoots that float in the water and small white flowers. You harvest the shoot tips and young leaves, and the plant continuously grows on. Watercress is not only delicious in salads, soups, or on bread, it is also a strong medicinal plant. It has blood-purifying, antibacterial, and immune-strengthening effects. Watercress used to be a staple in many regions because it is reliable, nutrient-dense, and available year-round. If you have the opportunity to grow watercress, use it. It is one of the few plants that grows even in winter and provides you with fresh greens when everything else is dormant. And number 18, nasturtium. Yes, it can also be perennial, at least in mild climates or as a protected crop. In warmer regions, nasturtium winters over without a problem. In colder areas, you can winter it in a greenhouse or as a potted plant. Its flowers, leaves, and even the unripe seed pods are edible and have a sharp, cress-like taste. Nasturtium is not only beautiful and useful, but also an important companion plant. It keeps aphids away from other plants by attracting and distracting them. It attracts pollinators and improves soil health. Nasturtium is rich in vitamin C, contains natural antibiotics, and strengthens the immune system. The plant grows quickly, climbs or creeps, blooms all summer long in bright colors, and is an asset to any garden. Those are the 18 vegetable varieties. But now comes the crucial part. How do you integrate them into a functioning system? Because individual plants are good, but a well-thought-out system is powerful. The first principle is diversity. You don't just want one or two varieties, but a multitude, because each plant has its own harvest time, its own requirements, and its own strengths. If you plant diversity, you'll have yields all year round. You aren't dependent on a single harvest or a single window of time. Asparagus in the spring, artichokes in the summer, Jerusalem artichokes in the fall and winter, tree kale in the depths of winter. This is a system that continuously provides for you. The second principle is soil stratification and depth effect. Perennial plants build deep roots, often several meters long. This means they pull nutrients and water from soil layers that annual plants never reach. At the same time, they loosen the soil, promote soil life, attract earthworms, and improve structure. A garden with many permanent crops becomes increasingly fertile over time, not poorer. The soil becomes richer in humus, more alive, and more resilient. That is sustainable gardening in the truest sense of the word. The third principle is self-regulation and ecological balance. Perennial systems are more stable than annual ones. They have fewer pest problems because they build a natural balance. Beneficial insects like ladybugs, hoverflies, ground beetles, and spiders move in because the system offers them a habitat. Soil organisms like bacteria, fungi, and earthworms multiply because the soil isn't constantly disturbed. The system regulates itself. You have to intervene less, spray less, and fight less. This saves not only time and money, but also nerves and frustration. The fourth principle is time relief and labor efficiency. Annual gardens are labor-intensive. Every spring, preparing the beds, digging or loosening, sowing, pricking out, transplanting, watering, hoeing, fertilizing. Those are hundreds of work hours per year. With perennial plants, much of this work falls away. You harvest, you occasionally maintain, you mulch maybe once a year, and you harvest again. That is the difference between a garden that owns you and a garden you own. You gain time for other things, for your family, for your life, and yet you harvest more. The fifth principle is crisis, resilience, and independence. Imagine a year comes when you can't garden. Maybe you're sick. Maybe you lack seeds. Maybe spring is too chaotic. Maybe there are supply shortages or economic problems. In an annual garden, you harvest nothing. In a perennial garden, you harvest anyway. The plants are there. They produce regardless of what happens around them. That is true resilience. That is the kind of security that doesn't depend on systems, but on what you have built yourself. The sixth principle is connection to nature and ecosystem thinking. Perennial plants are more natural. They mimic forest ecosystems. They build humus. They store carbon in the soil. They provide habitat for insects, birds, and small mammals. Your garden becomes a living system, not a production area. And it is this living system that feeds you long-term. It is more resistant to drought, to pests, to extreme weather. It is a system that works even if you don't constantly intervene. The seventh principle is genetic stability and adaptation. Perennial plants adapt to their location. Over the years, they develop a tolerance for local conditions, your soil, your climate, and your specific challenges. They get hardier with each year because they learn. This is something annual plants can never do. They start from zero every year without adaptation, without memory. Perennial plants, on the other hand, are living archives that continuously improve. Now for the practical implementation. You don't have to plant everything at once. That would be overwhelming and unsustainable. Start with 3 or 4 varieties that fit your location, your soil, your climate, and your needs. If you have plenty of space and think long-term, plant asparagus and rhubarb. If you want to start small and look for quick results, plant garlic chives, sorrel, and perennial herbs. If you have fallow areas you want to use meaningfully, plant Jerusalem artichoke. If you want to harvest in winter, plant tree kale. If you have shady areas, plant woodruff and good King Henry. Choose deliberately, plan long-term, and then plant. Most of these plants are inexpensive. Often you can get divisions from neighbors, through seed swaps or gardening groups. Many are also easily propagated by division, and once planted, they are your capital, your living investment that becomes more valuable with each year. Care for them in the first 1 to 2 years until they are established. Water during dry spells, especially in the first summer. Mulch the beds to retain moisture and suppress weeds. Keep weeds away in the initial phase so the young plants don't face competition. Fertilize in spring with compost or organic fertilizer. But after that, they run themselves. You harvest, you enjoy, you harvest again. And with each year, they become more productive, larger, and higher yielding. This is the opposite of what we know from modern agriculture, where yields fall over time because the soil is depleted. Here they rise because the system matures, because the plants get stronger, because the ecosystem builds itself. An important note, perennial plants don't mean you should never grow annual crops again. Tomatoes, zucchini, beans, lettuce, they have their place, but they should be the supplement, not the basis. The basis should be the plants that stay, that give you security when everything else is uncertain, that give you yields even if you can't actively garden for a year. Also think about fruit trees, berry bushes, nut trees. They belong to the same principle. Perennial food sources that are planted once and then produce for decades. An apple tree can live for 70 years and produce hundreds of apples every year. A hazelnut bush can live for 50 years. A currant hedge produces for 30 years. All of these are investments in your future, your security, and your independence. And when you combine them with the 18 vegetable varieties, you have a system that truly makes you independent. A system that works even if the world around you begins to falter. Imagine 10 years have passed. You walk through your garden on a spring morning, and something is growing everywhere. Asparagus is shooting out of the ground, thick and juicy. Rhubarb stands strong and green, ready for harvest. Jerusalem artichoke is spreading in the background, a golden sea in the fall. Tree kale towers like a small palm tree, green even in January. Walking onions are sprouting. Garlic chives are fragrant in the morning sun. Horseradish waits under the earth, patient and sharp. Artichokes unfurl their silver leaves, majestic and productive. Sorrel gives you the first green of the year, tart and fresh. Herbs are fragrant in every corner. Thyme, sage, oregano, mint. Dandelion blooms golden by the path. Watercress grows by the little pond. Wild arugula blooms yellow and spicy. Nasturtium winds over the fence. You didn't resow, you didn't buy, you only harvested. That is freedom. That is security. That is independence. This is not a romantic dream or an idealistic vision. This is possible. This is proven. It works. It is exactly the kind of system you need if you think long-term, if you understand that the world is changing and that stability is no longer a given. Your grandparents knew this. That's why they had gardens. That's why they had perennial crops, fruit trees, berry bushes, not as a hobby, not out of nostalgia, but out of necessity. They knew that independence isn't in the bank or in promises, but in the soil, in the plants, and in what you have built yourself. And maybe, just maybe, this necessity will become more relevant again than we can imagine today. The signs are there. Supply chains collapsing, energy prices rising, food prices exploding, extreme weather increasing, political uncertainty, economic instability. These are not catastrophe scenarios. They are realities affecting more people every day. But even if not, even if everything stays stable, if supermarket shelves are always full, if life goes on as before, what is the argument against being more independent? What is the argument against having better, fresher, more nutrient-dense food that you grew yourself, that didn't fly halfway around the world, that contains no pesticides and isn't wrapped in plastic? What is the argument against saving money, saving time, and building something meaningful at the same time? None. There is no rational reason not to do it. Only inertia, only habit, only the feeling that it might be complicated, that you won't make it, that you don't know enough. But that is a lie. It's not complicated. It's simpler than you think. Simpler than what you are doing now. Simpler than driving to the supermarket every week to spend money on things you could grow yourself. Simpler than being dependent on systems that don't act in your interest. So here is my call to you. Start. Not eventually, not next year, not when you have more time, more money, or more knowledge. Now. Pick 3 plants from this list. Just 3. Get cuttings, seeds, or root pieces. Plant them this spring, this fall, whenever you are seeing this video. Because every year you wait is a year you lose. A year in which these plants could already be growing, establishing themselves, and giving you a yield. A year in which you could already be more independent. And once you've done that, watch what happens. Watch how your garden changes, how it becomes more alive, more stable, more productive, more beautiful. Watch how you change, how you yourself become more confident, calmer, more independent. How you start thinking differently, planning differently, living differently. And then, when you're ready, you add more plants. Maybe not all 18, maybe only 10, maybe only 5. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you understand the principle and implement it. The principle of permanence, the principle of independence, the principle of smart, long-term action. If this knowledge about nature's hidden treasures has changed your view on self-sufficiency, then subscribe to this channel now. We are uncovering the roots of an independence that had been forgotten for a long time. Sow freedom today for tomorrow. The next chapter of your green security will be open soon. Don't forget to leave a like to support this movement. Write in the comments which of these plants you already know or which you want to try first. Stay tuned, because the path to true independence has only just begun.